Call this meeting of Upshur Board of Education to order. The first order of business is standing for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Sugar, would you like to read your statement?
The mission of the Upshur County Schools is to provide academic preparation, social responsibility, employability, and a desire of lifelong learning.
Thank you. Please let the clerk note that all members are present with the exception of Dr. Allman. Item 4 is the approval of the agenda and/or agenda adjustments.
And you do have additions under D, personnel, some additions to that.
Do I have a motion to accept the agenda as presented?
Motion to approve as presented.
Second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Item 5, the approval of minutes from the August 8th, the August 22nd, and the September 12th meeting. You have those as your attachment A.
Motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Item 6, acknowledgements and/or announcements, Upshur highlights.
I thought we would have some employees of the month, but we didn't get a whole lot in, so we're going to try to catch up and then go forward from there.
Next item on the agenda is unfinished business.
Well, let's see, the maintenance crew is continuing to complete work on the steps in the back of the gym at Buchanan Academy. The steel steps had rusted out over the years, and we're fortunate in that Jim Hours, one of our maintenance members, is a certified welder. And he's doing a tremendous job. The assistant's Mike DeRico, and so that's being repaired. We don't have to worry about it gobbling up any children or any adults at this point. Lots of issues with HVAC throughout the county, considering the age of the units and some of our facilities. It's an ongoing issue, and as problems arise, they're being addressed as timely as possible. At the high school, I believe, in the HVAC system, it uses the glycol, and there was a leak, and if the leak is at a joint, we're going to be okay. But if the leak is in a pipe, we're going to have to drain it, which is about 13,000 gallons of glycol, and then you repair the leak, and then you pump the glycol back in. So we're waiting to see what that's
We
going
have
to
to have a specialist do that.
Yeah, they'll do it. We'd use a company that we contract with by the name of Simco. So yeah, that's, the local handyman cannot do that one. Yes, sir?
High school.
Yes, the high school. So hopefully we'll have some information on that soon.
How long will that process take? Any idea?
No idea. No idea. But 13,000 gallons of fluid is substantial. You know, they can pump it out and save it and then reuse it. So that's the good news as far as the expense goes. We're getting the playgrounds caught up to speed. The ground's dry, and we're getting new mulch in the fall zones and addressing some safety issues for the kids. And going on from there, there's always going to be something that breaks down and needs fixed, and the guys are on top of it and doing very well. So I think that's about all we have right now.
Any additional questions? All right, thank you. Item 8, our financials. Mr. Carter, do you have information you'd like to add?
Yes. I'm going to come out here.
That'd be great.
I laid in the pocket
front of you. This is what I call the published file. This was sent to the Record Delta today to be published in the newspaper. We're required by state code that within 60 days after the end of our, we hold the books open for 60 days, and then within 90 days after the end of the previous fiscal year, we're required to prepare our financial statements and publish those in the paper and send this and some other information to the Western Union Department of Education Office of School Finance. And then these will be audited sometime between now and March 31st, and we'll have an audit report on the financial statements. And I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about these, but just to go through them briefly. The first 2 pages are what are called the entity-wide statements. And there are statements required by the Government Accounting Standards Board a few years back that we prepare our financial statement on an accrual basis. So we had to figure out what fixed assets we had and some other long-term liabilities. And you'll notice that item about a third way up from the bottom of the page of the liabilities, net pension liability. That's another GASB pronouncement that a year ago we had to start putting our share, actually 2 years ago, our share of the unfunded state pension plan liability on our books, and so that's what that number is. That doesn't mean that we're going to pay that immediately. We'll be required to pay that. The state has a plan to address the unfunded issue with our state pension plan, and they're contributing upwards of $500 million a year to the teachers' retirement system to get that plan funded. When they started that, it was in the mid-20s percentage of funding, and as of the last actuarial report, they were up near 60% funded. So that's been a long process. We have another several years to go, and that's somewhat contributing to the state's budget problem, in that they're committed to putting this money in the retirement plan every year. But if you look at states like Illinois, which haven't done anything to address that problem, they're having trouble getting enough money to pay their current retirees or benefits because they haven't funded their pension plan. So in comparison, our state's in pretty good shape. And it'd be one of the bright spots in our budget. But those statements would compare to what any for-profit business would prepare, and you can look at those when you. The next 2 pages are what we call the fund basis statements. Those are the traditional statements that we always have prepared. The first page of that is the balance sheet, the governmental funds balance sheet, and we use Fund 11 and Fund 61. We didn't have any construction projects this year. We would use Fund 51. We had that fund last year, but we don't have that one this year. On the statement of revenues and expenditures, for the year, in Fund 11, we had we call it excess of revenues over expenditures of $346,000. We've been running in the negative the last several years, so this is a step in the right direction. The main driver of that is that we received Medicaid revenue over the summer for FY16 that had been held up in the billing process, the billing changes they've been making. So that means that our fund balance at the end of the year is a negative $1.5 million. But if you look back at the balance sheet, there's a liability on there for other post-employment benefits payable. That was another GASB pronouncement. That's for the cost of health insurance for retirees. So that liability is $1.6 million. And they put something in state code a couple years ago that you could net those 2 numbers to come up with your fund balance. So when you take that out, we actually have a positive fund balance. We still have a negative unrestricted fund balance, but hopefully when we get through next year, or the current year, we'll correct that issue. The next couple pages, there's a supplemental schedule that kind of breaks out your salaries and the superintendent's, and shows how much of our expenditures are salary and non-salary, and the remaining pages are a list of vendors that we paid over $250 for the year. So that was sent to the newspaper today. It's been posted on our website. So we've met our legal requirement to prepare financial and publish our financial statements for the year. If you don't have any questions, that's all I have to say. There's a lot of other things that still have to go with this, notes and management discussion. And when that's prepared, I'll present that to you in the future. But I have to have it done by Friday, so I'm still working. If you have questions later on, you can always contact me as well.
Thank you.
But there's no actionable
No,
responsibility in this, right? Okay.
we have to do it.
Yes. As per normal. All right. Any other questions for Mr. Barker? If not, we'll move on to item 9, consent agenda. You have 2 things there. Collaborative agreement with Upshur Human Resources, attachment B, and the parent chaperones for Tennerton, attachment C. Anybody want to say anything about pre-K agreement?
Sorry. On the pre-K agreement, is it the same exact agreement we've had in the past?
Actually, I was going to talk about that under information, but this year we've finally were able to get Head Start to agree to allow us to count
Yes.
for 4 of the 6 other classrooms that they have, all the 4-year-old kids. The only reason we don't do all 6 is because 2 of the classrooms, the teachers will not be able to get certified right now. So we're hoping that after this year, we'll have them also. So that's going to, I think we figured out we're going to be able to add 38 kids to our enrollment, which I'm keeping my fingers crossed, but I think it means we'll actually be above what we were last year, and we'll have a plus.
We can get a bus then, right?
Maybe. Let's not get carried away. Don't get carried away. You can apply for one through federal government. Remember that, Ron?
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah, that's why you asked.
That's $100,000.
So all other qualifications are,
They have to go through a certification process, which is a little bit different from ours. Am I right, Jack?
Actually, for the classroom teacher, now they have to abide by policy 5202.
And 4 of them are going to be okay, but they're going to be permittable. The other 2 are not even permittable, so.
and we can approve this without a permit process? Does it take a?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. Do I have a motion to accept the consent agenda items as presented?
So moved.
Second? Second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Correspondence and information, item 10.
Okay, I do have 2 items I'd like to bring to your attention. We had a superintendent's meeting for the our RESA, the 12 superintendents in Harrison County today. We also met 2 weeks ago as just the superintendent, so this has not been approved by the full RESA board, which includes board members. Dr. Ong is our representative, but as of the end of this school year, we will be dissolving RESA, and we've decided that what we can do, and that's why we met today, is we can do a lot of collaboratives and be able to do a lot of the same things, but without having to, remember when we talked about the ESCs, those groups, and we had that discussion at the SBA meeting, where you have to hire somebody, you have to have bylaws, you have to have a board member, you have to have meetings. By doing collaboratives, we don't have to do all that, so we can save money that way because we don't have to hire somebody. And so what we did today is we met the 12 counties to decide what the needs of the counties were that were supplied by RESA, and then how we were going to move forward with that, and what we're going to be doing with a lot of the employees. We have a number of RESA employees in the county. Our O&M, our orientation and mobility teacher is hired through RESA. Our occupational therapists, physical therapists, and our pre-K speech therapists are all hired through RESA. We are since the O&M teacher lives in Upshur County, but she serves a number of counties. We've agreed to hire her. She will be our employee, but the other counties will pay us for the days that she works for them, which is kind of what you do through RESA right now. And then the OTPT and pre-K speech therapists will actually be our employees. And if I understood right, and I may be totally wrong, and I'll take it back if I'm wrong, is that they will be on a certified list, but they won't count against us in the overall teacher-pupil ratio, that whole thing we go through each year. So that's good news if that comes true. But there's a number of things and the reason we did this is because when we had the meeting to dissolve, as far as the superintendents are concerned, the bigger counties said, we don't want to do an ESC. We don't need to. We're just financially okay. We don't need to hire. We don't need to go through a reset or an ESC to do these things. But then they stepped forward and said, we're willing to work with all of the counties in our reset to help. So Harrison County will be taking over some of the things that RESA did, but we would, if we need that service, we would pay them. If we don't pay them. Like there's an audiologist that works with our kids. She's a RESA employee. The audiology room, for lack of a better term, is housed at RESA right now. They're going to move that building, that room, to RESA, and they're going to hire the audiologist. And then we would do exactly what we've been doing through RESA, pay per child that goes up there and has to be tested. That's just an example. There's going to be a lot more that I'll share with you when we get to that point and after we have our big RESA meeting with the board members.
Beyond staffing, did you have other conversations about purchasing and
Yes, we did.
building?
Actually, we found out that we have been doing the collaborative purchasing through AEPA, which I can't, if you ask me what it stands for, I can't tell you. But RESA 2 already started an ESC, and that's what their ESC is going to be, collaborative buying. And we can go through them, we could join them, but for everything that we buy through AEPA, RESA was getting the 2% back. You know, that was revenue coming into them. Well, RESA 2 jumped on that real fast, and they have an exclusive with AEPA. So if we want to buy things through AEPA, we'd have to go to RESA 2. But what we're finding out, and a lot of the things that we need to purchase, if we contact the vendor, they will, and we say, well, here's what AEP says we can get it for, and the vendors will say, well, I can do that. So in a lot of ways, it helps us because it's out there.
Yes.
But then we can use them to get a better price. And it's the same vendors. So that's one example. The grants, we have a number of grants through RESA that will actually, my understanding is that money, instead of going to RESA and then they oversee them, the money will come straight to us. And then we'll do our own, we'll run the grants. Well, we pretty much do our own thing with those grants anyway. But they run the money and everything like that. So that's another example of things that we'll be doing. There are, I had a list actually. Let me look at my list, because I had a lot of questions. Bus driver training, that may still...
I was going to ask about
that,
bus driver training.
Right now, the state is trying to come out and figure out how they want to do that. Because there won't be a reason to do it.
Right.
So that's one of the things they're looking at. In fact, the gentleman from RESA is going to a meeting with the state transportation. Actually, we have trainers, but they work
We have
through
some of the
RESA.
best trainers in the state.
Yeah. And actually, our idea was because Randolph County has the tester. You can't have the tester be from your own county, just for ethical reasons. So our idea with talking to Mr. Devano and Randolph County was that we could do the training for both counties. They would pay us to do that, and then we would pay for the testing, because their guy would do the testing. So we have a good idea. But we have to wait and see what the state decides.
Great.
They may force us to stay in that. But I would rather do this other thing because it works better for us.
Definitely.
But there were a lot of issues with some counties that were kind of, the trainers were milking it.
Wouldn't that help with like substitute bus drivers?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, all of that. WEVIS is a big issue. And in fact, that's one of the things that, and I think I may have mentioned this, there's 4 quadrants now. The state is divided into 4 sections. And we joined RESA 8, which is the Eastern Panhandle, not being told that the only thing that the quadrant had to do was to have 2 meetings a year with all the superintendents and a board member, like RESA does, but it would be 20 counties. And then we would have to report the superintendent that was voted in as the head of our quadrant would have to report to the state superintendent and the State Board of Education and his legislative oversight committee. And it was supposed to be just a way to share ideas. Well, now the State Department started to add things onto that. And one of them was the WEVAS. And they're hiring 4 people, 1 for each quadrant. Well, if we had known that they were only going to hire 1 person for each of the quadrants, we're the biggest quadrant still. We have 20 counties. There's counties with only 10. So if they have 1 person to work for 10, we have 1 person to work for 20, it's going to mess us over. We're going to be worse off than we were when Mike was here and he had 12 counties. So the superintendents agreed, and we're still working on this, to hire a WEVAS person to be housed in Harrison County that would work just with our counties, besides having that quadrant person that the state hires. So it's going to give us extra help there. Because in talking to George and just our record keeping and everything, if we didn't have the RESA people that we're doing with Mike Harker and that were helping us out, they rely on finance a lot, and so even though we have a WEVAS contact in the county, they don't always have the answers, so Mike Harker was great in helping us that way. So this is a way to kind of help us and get some extra help that way. So that's another thing that we're looking at.
It's my understanding that they are cutting the WEVAS workforce in half, based on that committee that I serve on. So I believe that there were 2 WEVAS people per RESA, so 60. And
Yes.
they're dropping it to 8, 4 for the actual thing, and then 4 who are like the technology piece of it.
And they'll be in Charleston.
Right. So they're dropping, they're cutting workforce in half. So.
But that's just an example of something. So I just wanted you to be aware that, because you'll probably start hearing about that, especially after we have our recent meeting to dissolve after this school year. And we don't know what's going to happen. When you dissolve a RESA, the legislation says you will dissolve all the assets. So Harrison County owns the building, so that's an easy one. But all of the equipment and everything that's in there will have to either be sold, auctioned off, or divided amongst the 12 counties. We don't know how that's going to happen. There will also be a carryover. Estimated right now about $300,000 to $350,000. And that probably will be divided up to the counties. But if you do it per pupil, and you got 12 counties, and we got Marion, Mon, and Harrison, it's not going to be a whole lot of money coming that way. But it'd be some. So, but like I said, I'll give you more information as I learn it.
I am also on a committee with the School Board Association that we've had a couple of meetings to work on some forms as we move forward from RESA to whatever comes next. And there's a meeting at the Board of Education in Charleston on October 11th. And what they've done is they've put a packet of information together for each county. It includes the needs assessment that you might have seen at the Charleston meeting. It includes some information that has what you or your county gets from RESA. It's that. And then there are a couple other documents in there. So that is what the School Board Association is moving toward to help this process. So I'm going to try to go to that meeting on the 11th, but so.
Any questions about the RESA thing? The other thing I'd like to let you know is we are going to submit an SBA project. We had it narrowed down to 2, but Janet needs to close her ears back there because one of them was Hodgesville. But we have found out, if George is correct, that we are in a floodplain here, and they're not going to give you money if you're in a floodplain. But we're trying to change that and fix it so that we can possibly, we wanted to do 2. One was for the HVAC here, like we talked about in the past. And the other one that we are going to definitely submit is for a roof at Tenerton. It's in really bad shape. I don't think it's been hardly touched other than patching since the building was built. So I just want you to be aware. And we're not putting any money into it. we're going to ask not to put any money into it. That's it.
Thank you. Item 11 is personnel. That will be your attachment D. Any questions about that? If not, I'll entertain a motion to accept personnel as presented.
Motion approved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. All right. Item 12, delegations and public comments. Item 13, board member comments.
Thank you, Hodgesville, for having us. Appreciate it.
All right, the next meeting date is scheduled for Tuesday, October 10th at 6 p.m. at French Creek.
This will be our first LSIC faculty senate.
All right, next item on the agenda is the student hearing. Do I have a motion to go into executive session?
Motion to go into executive session, student hearing, West Virginia Code 69843.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are now in executive session.